So I wanted to create a DnD game using Plang. I noticed here on the ChatGPT store that there are quite a few of them here, and I'm not really a DnD guy, but it's an interesting thing to play around. So what I would kind of like to do is, we have maybe have multiple games in my app. I need to set up the GPT or the LLM to kind of set up the LLM so it kind of is the controls the game. That probably exists already, so we can Google that. DnD. Let's see what that gives us. Okay. Instructions. Good instructions here. I had some prompt here. I think this one. This one is kind of cool. So let's copy this. This would be kind of the system command to the LLM. Okay, so let's start, and we have here in our editor. Let's create a new folder. File. So I'm gonna put folder, and let's just put this here into. I'm just gonna put it here into temp. I'm gonna call it DnD, and that's a good folder to open. Okay. Yes. So we want. Let's start with this system.txt. Somewhere. So if you look at this is going to be stop it. So these are kind of the settings, game book, role theme. Okay. So we could maybe let our application modify this, inject variables here instead of having it hard-coded. Okay, we also wanted to have like multiple games, so to be able to create many games. So let's start with setting up a database. I want to set up a database here. So first I would think that we need some games table. Games, and let's add some columns to that. If we look at the system here at the top, we have here game, books, character, and so on. So let's just take this. Game, books, role, theme, tonality, character. Okay. Oops. And let's also have here created. So when is this game created? That should be date time, and let's have the default theme now. Maybe when it's updated, date time also now. Yeah, that's kind of I would like to see. Let's put here, just define that it's a string, just in case. Okay. So we have a game, and we have these properties on the game. So we would also want to store the storyline for each game, because we want to be able to see what we played and such. So there we would have something like game ID, of course. It should be along when it's created. That's good. Date time. Let's put now as the thing. The story, like that. That's not well. And some summary. So we want to have some summary of the story, just so we can kind of input that into the LLM on our next run. And user. So user. Now let's leave it like this. So we have it like this. Okay, so now we have our database set up. Oops. Like this. So we have our table and storyline. So this makes sense. So we can actually build this and execute it. So we will have our database. Okay. In the meantime, we can, while it's building, we can actually go into our start goal. This is the entry point into the application. So let's start, and we would kind of here we would probably ask ask the users, what would you like to do? So we'd say, so we would like to say ask user, what would you like to do? Zero, create a new game. And we would actually want here also to list all our games that are already in the system. So we need to select start from games, order by updated task to games variable. Makes sense. We want to format this a little bit, I think. So let's do that. Let's call here goal. Actually, let's say for each, or go through games and call format message. So let's add another goal here, and we'll just say append to ask user message. We want to append item ID. That's the ID of the game. So we choose the ID. We also have game and books. Let's just list that out. Item game and item books. So have something like this, and create game, and then we can do like this. So it would actually first, if you choose 0, create a new game. Otherwise, it's gonna print out the ID and the name of it, kind of. So ask the user, we want the result right to choice. That's gonna be the result that the user chose. So we're gonna say if choice 0, and call create game, because she wants to create a game. If choice is bigger than 0, and call continue game. That sounds good. Something like that. Okay. So create game. Let's do that. So what would we like to do? Well, for creating a new game, we want to start by setting up some defaults, because we are gonna send this to the LLM and we want to override these. So we want to put this as variables. So these will be our defaults. Set default values for so it's like this. So these are the variables that we want to set. let's see if it figured this out. Maybe we could do it like this. But I'm gonna save my typing and see if it just does it for me. So that's kind of it. Then we want to ask the user, before we start, choose your setup of the game, something like that. Now we can have we can copy this in, so this is going to be displayed, and we write that into preferences, something like that. Preferences. So that will be the game preferences. Okay. Now, so if the user doesn't really type anything in, if it's empty, then we can create the game. If it's not empty, we need to kind of see what he chose. We need to set those properties. So if preferences is not empty, and call load preferences. So now we need to create a call here called load preferences. And we need to use the LLM now to kind of tell him to, read the user input and map it to these properties. So to do that, we need to create a new system for these preferences. I'm gonna create a new folder here called LLM because that's where we're gonna put everything, and I'm gonna take this and drag it over here so we have it. And I want to say here, this is preferences system txt. So by doing this, so we are gonna set it up, and we're gonna say from the user input fill in the JSON scheme. So we're gonna take here and we're gonna say these are the defaults. We do it like this, and we need to define the scheme that we want. So first we're gonna read this file, read preferences system txt to preferences system. Okay, and we want to ask the LLM to map what the user kind of wrote here into these properties here. So let's say system, that's gonna be this preference system. So that's, and user, that's the preferences, and we want it in a scheme where it maps this. So game, game string books, that's going to be string role, that's a string theme, string penalty, that's a string characters, string. So when we define it like this, and we are not, we could say here right to game properties, and we could then access these properties by doing so. But if we skip this thing here, we can access the properties or the variables immediately like this. it will automatically load this into variables named this. So now, by doing this, we have actually overwritten this variable here. So whatever we write, it's going to be overwriting it here. So here we ask the user to define the setup of the game. We get the preferences in. If it's not empty, then we call load preferences, read the system prompt into this, and send that to the LMM, the preferences that the user defined, and then write that into those the variables. Okay, so now we have that set up, so we can actually just insert into games. Yes, the table games we want to insert into games. So we want to insert these kind of properties in there. I'm just gonna, I don't know if it's okay. Like this. This. Now the Plang language will figure out which column to put into, because they are all kind of named the same thing. Just cleaning up a little bit. So we have this, and we want to get the right to game ID. Game ID. So we want to get the ID that is created in game, because we will also create a new storyline. So we can now say, well, we want to start the game, because now we've set up the game. Now we want to create the first kind of storyline. Start game. Okay. So create a new goal called start game. Okay. I want to kind of say here, just write out, starting game, because it takes a couple of seconds to kind of do this. So we want to show it that something is happening. So we want to set up the game. We need to read this system file, and we need to change also this, so we can load in the properties. Books. Role. Thing. Okay. And character, of course. Okay. Start the game. So let's read. I want to kind of change also the name of this. This is game setup system. Let's call it that. Okay. Let's create game, starting game. Okay, we want to read this file. So we need to read this file to send this to the LLM, because we are setting up the game. So let's read game setup system txt into game setup system. Next, we want to do the LLM request. So, and we're just gonna inject this thing here. And actually what we want to do also, we want to say that it should load variables. So when it reads this file, it's gonna see that there are some variables here, and it's gonna load them. And those variables we had here, or here, actually. So we're gonna send the system. Anything else? Yeah, we want to have a schema. So if we look at the setup, what we did, we created a storyline. We have a game ID. We have that loaded, actually. Created. Okay, that's the default values now. Okay, and then we have story and summary. So we actually need story and summary from. So here we would like to say story string summary string. If you look at the game setup, so this will generate only the story. But we want to keep we want to have a summary also, because we want to, when we run the game again and again and again and again, we want to submit that summary to the LLM, because the LLM doesn't have any memory. So we have to feed it the whole memory again and again and again. So we should write something should write something like in your response you must generate a story for the game that should be in the story property, and then summary that can be sent with the next LLM request. Skip. Okay, and we want to skip, because we have the game and books here properties, we don't need him to kind of summarize that for us. So we can say here skip the games and books and all of that. So we can skip these. So we're not wasting any properties in the summary. And yeah, I want to also have the story and the summary in an empty format. So story and summary should be in .empty format. Okay. So now we have this system set up. Okay. Yeah. We will then get, when he responds, we will now get into the story variable and into the summary variables. So what we can do now is basically save this storyline. So let's call here and call save storyline. Oh, actually, one thing that I'm noticing here is that I'm missing, I didn't do in my setup, or in the storyline, is the user input. So we just have the story and the summary, and what we need is a user input. So what did the user write? So we need to modify the table, so add column. We can't just write this here. We can't do this because this line here has already been executed, and there is already a table called storyline. So even if if you would run this again, you would basically get an error because the table already exists. Plus, we don't really want to do that. We want to add a new line in the code so we can clearly see any modifications that has been done. So add column to storyline, named user string. So yeah, okay, and we can actually run this setup again. It needs to build and such, so we'll just have the database ready when we are starting. So call goal, and the user input here is basically just let's play. It's he's not really saying anything. It's just we're giving this as a default thing. Okay, so save storyline. For that, we just need to insert into the table, insert into storyline, and we want to insert story, summary, game ID, which we have here. We inserted this into the games table. We called start game. It created here, so we still have access to this game ID. So let's do that. We even notice that the game ID is written like this, and in the setup it's written like this with an underscore, so it's not completely the same, but it will figure it out, so don't need to worry about that. It's already starting to build the whole app, so let's just cancel that for now. Okay, game ID, story, summary, and we had also user. I think that's everything we had. Game ID created and will be automatically. It will be basically the current date, story, summary, and we added the user. So let's run actually setup so we have the database ready. Okay, sounds good. So let's get also here the ID. Right to storyline ID. Maybe we'll need it later, not sure. So next, now that we have it, we would like to show the story. We've stored it into the database. Now we want to show it. So call show storyline. So let's create that call. So let's see, what should we do? Well, show storyline, we can either select everything from the database, or we can just print it out. We can just write out story, and this would just basically print out the story. Yeah, so that will be it. What we need also to do is ask the user, what do you want to do next? Because the story needs to continue. So ask user. So the story will ask you what are the next step. Let's allow him to exit the app. So let's do like to exit the game, type in exit game. Like this, I think. And then we maybe do like this. And right to next step. So we will write out the story, and in that story it will kind of ask the user or give him a couple of options to do next. We will then see this kind of prompt here, and he will write in what's the next step he wants to do. Now, if he types in exit game, then we want to basically go back to the start. If he writes some options, then we want to create the next storyline. So if next step is exit game, okay, and call start, else, well, call create new story, create new storyline, or is it just create storyline? So here we have start game. Yeah, we don't have any new storyline because it's gonna be a little bit different. This one, it's gonna be a little bit different than when we start the game, I would think. So let's create a new storyline. Okay. So first of all, we need to select all the properties. Select, and we want to select all these kind of properties that are in the games table. So we have this game ID we have, and we want to get everything out of it. So select all of these. Let's do it like this because that's the column names. So we have the columns there, and we want to select it from the games table where ID is the game ID. So again, because we are selecting this, and we're going to say it's just one row. This will actually load these properties into the variables. Okay. Next, we want to select last storylines, because we need to give the LMM history. LMM doesn't really have any memory, so each time we do a request, we need to tell it the whole history before. So we want to select everything, or select summary, or the user input, the user, and we want to do the summary from storyline. Where the game ID is the game ID, and we want to order it by ID task, so latest. So you can also say created task, or you could also say newest first. That also works. And just five newest first. Let's see if this works. So we want the user, we want the summary. Kind of want to define this variable a little bit better. I want to say user input, because we were going to send this to the, this is going to be the names of the columns that are going to go to the LMM. So storyline summary. So this is going to be the column names coming out, and we want to write to, let's write to story lines. Okay. So we need to, just like we did before when we started the game, we need to set up the LMM. So that one needs to be loaded up again. So with the setup where we are telling them to stop an AI model and, be a bot. Okay, we want that. We also want to inject all the storylines that we had. So we want to send system load variables into game setup system. Okay, so game setup system. Let's see what we can do there. So what we want to kind of tell them here is, so these are the previous storylines, to help you with your next move. So we can say previous storylines. Okay, and we want, that should be this one here. So we have here this variable, we are reading this file, we are actually saying here load the variables, and we want to get it into the game setup assistant variable. Now we should be ready to basically do the query to the LMM. I'm going to write out here, loading next storyline. Okay, and we're going to send to the LMM game setup system the assistant is the game setup assistant. Okay. Okay. Actually, what I want to do here also is the model. We want to use the latest model. Now, you can find this on what models are supported. Wait, models. Let's fix that. Yeah. Supported AI. So we have here, this is the latest version. So let's use that. Now, just like before, so let's actually take this also model here, and we want to, let's do that here also, and start the game. So here we have the start of the game. Let's put it there also. So it's also a little bit cheaper than GTP4. Okay, and yes, and we want to have the same schema. So basically story and summary. So that sounds good. So when it does the request to the LLM, it's going to send in the system setup and the previous storyline, and it's going to give us the next move into this. We can also do some temperature. This allows the LLM to be more creative. So, for example, temperature 1, top 1. You can play with these numbers. Okay. So now we can save this storyline. So we have already called save storyline. So create new story. So here in the save storyline, we have here the game ID. We have that story summary that's coming from the LLM, and we have a user. So we need to send in the user input, and the user input was this question we did here. So that was the next step. So let's say that user is the next step. Okay, so that will then call save storyline, which will then insert into, and it will then show the storyline, write it out, and ask for the next step. We are kind of, I think we are kind of getting there. So, shall we build this and see what happens? So it has now built the code, and I want to run it. So I run plang. It would ask me, you want to create a game? What would you like to do? Create a game? Yes. So before we start, choose the setup for the game. Just like we did. We could fix the formatting a little bit, but we'll survive. Basically, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to leave it as is. Starting game and loading. So we are now somewhere here. Insert start game. We are now here, starting game and loading. So it's doing the request here. And let's see if it gives us something. So I get here some adventure begins. So here I have some options to do. So my name's Sabrina, looks like. That looks good. Let's try to exit the game. And now I get back into the start. I can either create a new game or I can load this one. So let's just load this one and see if that works. No. So why didn't that work? So let's see. So choices are this: create game, continue game. Did we ever? I don't think we created continue game. No, we did not create a continue game. So let's continue the game. So here we need to. So what do we want to do? We need to figure out the game ID. I would say. So game ID. Yeah. Game ID. Well, we have the game ID from the start menu. That was that long ID. So we just need to show the storyline, but we need to load it first. Okay, so continue. So we need to get the story, basically. Okay. So show storyline. No, sorry, continue game. Okay. I'm gonna see how I did this here. I'm cheating a little bit. I have this already written. So we want to select the story because we want to display the story. We want to also, yeah, is there anything else we really need? I don't think we do. I think we just need to get the story from storyline where game ID is game ID. This was continue game, so game ID is actually this one here. Okay, so game ID from game ID. So this is return one row. Okay, this will then load this here into the variable. If I don't do return one row, it will actually return me a possibly list. So just one row, and we want the latest. We want the newest storyline. Okay. So that's good. So now we'll get the story. Now we can actually call show storyline. So call show storyline, and we have the story here. I don't think there's anything else. Show the write out story, and he will ask what's the next step. Okay. So building that. So building this, we are at $178. We started at 83, so we are about $5 in. So $5 to build this application. So let's see if it's gonna run. We have this ID. Let's take the ID. We want to run that, and we got our story. So now we can do some action. Ask Cedric more about the hidden chamber. Let's do that. Ask Cedric about the chamber. So he's loading now the next storyline. And there you have it. That's the next one, next step. So there you have DnD in Plang. Now, what you have also here is now you have the game stored on your computer. You have all the history here. And we can modify this in interesting ways. That's going to be another video. So that's where you can, let's say, for example, send this to your phone, and you could have the storytelling go through your phone. You can have multiple partners. You can change the story even, so allow you to edit it or edit the properties of the game. So anything kind of that you can think of, you can change.